Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel and welcome to another video. It's a long one today, so I hope that you've got a drink and a snack ready to join me for this video. So this is my Q1 reading wrap up in my reading journal. As you may have seen, I set up this reading journal at the beginning of March, so I was a little bit late to setting it up in 2023. That video is up on my channel. It did really well, so thank you so much to any of you who watched that. It was amazing to see how many people were still interested in a reading journal video 3 months into the year. And so if you were questioning whether you could start a reading journal, you absolutely can. It doesn't matter when it is. Though I would say that doing 3 months of a reading journal in one go is a lot. So just to let you know, the raw footage for this video was 6 hours. I spent all of my Easter Monday on my reading journal. So I'm not sure I would recommend doing the content in this way. It's just a lot to do 3 months worth of content. I'm hoping in an ideal world I will switch these to be monthly and I'll do these in place of my chatty sit down wrap up videos. I will do my readings spreads in here instead. So let me know what you think of that, whether you would prefer to see the chatty videos or whether you'd prefer the wrap-ups in here. I would love to know what you think. If I don't manage that, I'll do big quarter ones again. So if you prefer this format, let me know. But yeah, it's a lot. It was a lot to do, but really fun. I was listening to an audiobook while I did this. I was listening to The First 15 Lives of Harry August by Claire North, which was our work book club read. And the book club was today, and I actually ended up missing it due to an overrunning meeting. So I did not need to spend 6 hours finishing the audiobook in time for the book club meeting, but we live and we learn. And it was maybe better than me just watching shows. It meant I was really concentrated on the book journal, which was fun. So what I'll do is I'll just tell you a little bit about what I'm up to in the journal, and then I'll probably do some very top level reviews of all the books I've read so far this quarter, because the wrap-ups for January and February are on my reading channel, not on this channel. So I'll probably just do that to catch you up on everything I've read. So the first thing I did was fill out my Heartstopper Leaves 100 in 2023 spread, where I'm just colouring in these leaves that are the Heartstopper leaves. And I showed me setting this up in my reading journal, and I will have the file where I purchased it from on Etsy linked down below. I'm just colour coding the leaves based on I say the genre of the book, but sometimes it's the format of the book. So for example, like the age, or whether it's a manga or a graphic novel or something like that. So it's really not an exact science, my colour coding. It's based on the things I most like to read. The leaves are very pink because I read a lot of romance, and so I feel like maybe I should change up next year if I do this again what categories I pick for it, because you know we're going to have predominantly pink leaves across the whole of the spread. And then the spread that you'll see me colouring in now is my bookshelf spread. My bookshelf stickers are from Thumbelina Print, and again I will link Thumbelina Print down below. They have loads of really good journaling stickers, and I show some more of them in this video, so I will talk about those when we get there. But for this one, I'm colour coding the books based on the rating I gave them and then writing in the book title. So I've read 28 books, something like that, for the first 3 months. So I'm just filling those. I think 27 actually, because I think the first 2 lines is 25. And again, if I was doing this again in my 2024 reading journal, if I keep it up, I would maybe include half stars as different colours, because I read a lot of 3, 3.5, 4 and 4.5 books. As you can see, we've got predominantly 4 stars, which is fun, but quite a lot of 3 stars, and it's just very blue and yellow, and it's going to have the odd 5-star and the odd 2-star, and it's very rare I rate anything a 1-star, so it looks a little bit unbalanced, which is a bit of a shame. So I'm a little bit disappointed in that. But again, you know, you live, you learn. I'm trying not to be a perfectionist about my reading journal. It's an important learning challenge for me to do this journal, because it's pushing me to do skills that I don't necessarily have right now in terms of drawing and formats and coming up with ideas. So it's fun to try some new things. So after I finished colouring in this page, I then moved on to my series tracker. All I have here is the name of the series, not even the author, again, learning curve for next year, and then these little hearts that mark how many books there are in the series, and I just colour code them, like I just colour in the heart when I read another book in the series, so I just was updating that. And because I filled that out when I set it up, there wasn't actually a ton to do to set that up. Then this page is my 23 in 2023. I had drawn out the boxes in my original video, but my printer was playing up. So we fixed it now. We just unplugged it and plugged it in again, you know, as you do. So it's all good now. So all I've done to create these book covers is just get the book cover pictures from Goodreads. So I just like right click and copy image, put them into a Google Doc, resize them to roughly the size I think I want. And sometimes you may have to print a few times to get the size right, unless you're better than me and measure it properly. And then I'm printing them on sticker paper, cutting them out and sticking them in. Very simple, but I really like the way it looks. I did a video on this, which is up on my reading channel, which right now is kind of defunct. So if I remember, I'll link it down below. But it's really helpful to have this in a physical spread because I have actually read quite a few of them, but it means I can easily flick to this to see what books I haven't read yet. Whereas if it's just on the video, I have to go back, watch the video again, etc. So I really like this spread, and you'll see I'm just marking the number of stars that I gave for each of the books that I read. The video, when I put it up, was actually 20 books in 2023, but that's because I counted like the Ali Hazelwood novellas as I didn't even mention them. So it is actually 23. Then on the right hand side, I'm doing a Read the Rainbow challenge. This isn't a lot of work for me, it just is a cute spread, but it's basically you just read a book for each colour of the rainbow. I read a lot of romance, they have bright colours. It's very easy for me to read the rainbow, so you can see I've already done most of it. Again, this is a spread that I would change next time because I pre-drew in the lines without a ruler and I really don't like how it looks. I didn't get the cover perfect, so I really don't like that spread particularly, but you know, we live, we learn. It'll be better if I do another journal. So now we move on to the months, and I'm really happy with how these turned out. So for the letter cover page, I am using stickers again from Thumbelina Print. I pre-purchased the entire year, which is a big commitment because I'm not really known for sticking with things, but I really didn't want them to run out. I wanted to be able to do the full set. And on the listings on Etsy, Thumbelina Prints shows how they use them in a journal. So they cut the stickers down and trim them around the edge like this. So I'm in the main just kind of copied what they did in the listing photo to save me from having to be too adventurous. So I'm just cutting down the stickers and adding them around. So I think it looks really fun, and it's just so much easier than me drawing them because my drawing skills are not great. I can do some stuff. I have one bullet journal cover that went really viral on Instagram. So I can do it, but it's pretty rare. And when I was already spending 6 hours on this journal, this was definitely a better way to do it. So I always have that on the right hand side. And then on the left hand side, I'm basically using the spread for sort of my TBR books because I film a TBR video every month with the books that I'm going to read in the following month or the books I'm hoping to read. So I put those on the spread. And I will also kind of put on there if they're for a book club or for a readathon or something like that. So I do a slightly different format on the left hand side every time, which is really fun. I didn't actually do a video for January, sorry, I didn't do a January TBR video because of Vlogmas, so I don't really know why. There would have been a good Vlogmas content, but I don't think I got it filmed, so I just actually added all the books I read instead, so it looks like I smashed my TBR because I just didn't have one. So that's what I'm doing here, and again, I just get the book covers from Goodreads, I put them in Google Docs, I resize them, I print them out on sticker paper, very easy, and then I go around and add in my pen and stuff around it to decorate it. So on the next page, I will be going through my January stats, and I'm going to talk about them. I'm going to start now because I want to be able to speak about all the books as well. So while you're watching me do that, I'll tell you a little bit about my stats. So the way that I do my stats spread is I use the core pile spreadsheet from G of Books Roast, and I basically, the first spreadsheet you put in what the books are that you've read, and then it generates graphs for you on the second page. I got my fiance to help me to add in a month's filter so that I can have all the same stats, because they're very yearly stats in the CorePal spreadsheet. So I've managed to make it so that I can change it by month, as well as being able to see the overview, so I can just filter just January or just February, just March, etc. And then I've also figured out how to change the color of the graphs on there as well, which means that I can make it visually match the theme. So I picked colors that matched the January theme, and you can see I've picked pens that match, so I'm using Tombos and Mildliners. If you want to know the particular Tombow numbers, let me know and I can put those in the comments for you, but I probably am not going to go to the effort to find them during this voiceover, but you can let me know if you want to know what they are and I will tell you. But yeah, so I'm really happy with how the cohesiveness of the themes. And then for the stickers on those pages, I use boxes, and the little calendar is from the Coffee Monsters Co. And then the script sticker in the top left is from Plannerface, and I do PR for Plannerface, so you can use my code CAT10 to save 10% in your orders and add my name in notes to seller to pick up my freebie. My washi tape is also from Plannerface for this particular month. So let me talk you through my stats. So in January, I read 9 physical books and 2 audiobooks. I only really listen to audiobooks usually while I'm commuting, so I don't listen to a ton of audio. And in terms of series versus standalone, I read 8 books that were either the start, during, or the end, doubt there were any ends, of a series, and 3 standalones. I tend to read more series books. Even romances I read tend to be series. Oh, and I should say it was 11 books overall with 3,235 pages. So it was my best reading month so far, was January. In terms of genre, I read 8 romance, I think this is, no, 9 romance, 1 mystery and 1 fantasy. So I love romance. If you are new here, I love reading romance, my favourite genre, so that's not really a surprise. And then I have 2 really interesting graphs that I include. So I have one which is on the days it took me to read the book. And this is very skewed by the fact that I've been listening to Eragon, because I only listened to Eragon on long journeys. And we don't go on many of those. So that one took me 185 days because I was listening to it from July. So it's a little bit warped, but it's kind of fun because you can see that audiobooks take me so much longer. But for example, Meet Me in London apparently took me 25 days because I was reading it from December. So super interesting graph from CorePal there. And then in the book length is very interesting as well, just to see how many, like the number of pages in each book. So those are the 2 big sort of graphs I have. Then for the just to let you know, it's just started raining in the conservatory, so if you can hear that on this voiceover, hopefully it's atmospheric. Then for the book format, 8 of them were novels and 3 are novellas. I don't particularly read novellas normally, but I read the 3 Ali Hazelwood novellas, so that's what that was. I purchased from, this is a new spreadsheet I added into the CorePal. Sorry, not a new spreadsheet, a new graph that I added into CorePal is where I purchased the book from. It's just really interesting for me to see that. So I got 5 from Amazon, 3 from the works, 2 from Audible, and 1 other. Don't know what the other was. For age, I read 10 adult and 1 YA. I do like to read YA romance, so in some months that's bigger, but no middle grade. Star rating, I gave 4 3.5 stars, 5 4 stars, and 2 3 stars. No 5 stars. It took a while to get a 5-star this year. And then the publication year you can see for yourself, but I just like to include it. But the older books are because I was listening to the Agatha Raisin series. So let me give you a very brief rundown of the books that I read in January. I probably won't be able to do a full in-depth review of each one, but I'll give you my top level thoughts on each book, and you can always ask for more information in the comments if you'd like to. So the first book is A Merry Little Meet-Cute by Julie Murphy and Sierra Simone. I gave this 3.5 stars. It's about a porn star who ends up needing to work on a Hallmark movie for her producer because he produces both porn and Hallmark movies. And the co-star of the book is a pop star that she really fancied when she was younger. And it was fine. It was quite long. I think it's like 400 pages or something. I could check because I have the stats here, don't I? Yeah, it was like 418 pages, so quite long for a romance. And I just wasn't fully invested in the story, but it was fun, you know. I would recommend it it was very steamy. If you like steamy books, it might be one for you. Next up, I read Meet Me in London by Georgia Toffolo. This is the first in a series, and I rated it 3.75/4 stars on Goodreads, but it's a 4-star and I just need to accept it. So this is a book about Victoria and Oliver, and they kind of run into each other one day and then they end up meeting again because it's fate. And Oliver asks Victoria to basically to agree to fake date him to get his parents off his back. And she agrees because he says that she can host a fashion show of her students' work at his new department store. And I don't know Georgia Toffolo. I think she's in Made in Chelsea. The reason I say that is because the book is set in Chelsea, so I just feel like she's from Made in Chelsea, but I don't know. But the book is just fun. I wouldn't say it's expertly written. I think she's written some of it, and then she has a ghostwriter or like a collaborative writer. It's mentioned at the beginning of the book, and you can tell that some bits are written by a different person and some parts are written by her, and ultimately the book maybe suffers a bit for that as a result, but I just liked it. It was really cute. The story was really fun. So if you like romances that aren't necessarily the best written but just fun, you know, you might like it. Next up, we have the 3 novellas. So I got The Loath to Love You, which is the physical, book that brings together the 3 novellas, but I'll speak about them each individually. If you don't know, I do have a bit of a history with Ali Hazelwood. So I absolutely loved The Love Hypothesis. I thought that Love on the Brain was not great, and so I was really interested to see what I sort of thought of the novellas. I wouldn't actually recommend reading them the way I did, which was one after another. I think it's better to spread them out because the whole she's small and tiny and he's tall and big is less obvious if you don't binge read them. So the first one is Under One Roof. And I gave this one 4 stars. I actually really liked this one. It was about Mara, whose PhD supervisor passes away, and she, like, in her will gives her half the house, and she ends up moving, like, the guy she moves in with is Liam, the PhD supervisor's nephew, and it's like close proximity, grumpy sunshine. It's really good. I loved Liam the most of all 3 of the protagonists in these novellas. Then we had Stuck With You, which was my least favourite. I gave it kind of 3.5 stars. It's maybe a 3-star, but in this one we have Sadie and Eric, and they run into each other over a croissant one breakfast, and they click instantly. They have a really, really passionate night, and then they meet the next day, and Sadie realizes that Eric is from the competing engineering company, and she assumes that he is trying to take her clients away from her, is basically what happens. And all of the novellas are told from the present day and then go back in time. So all of them are told like that. And this was the one that annoyed me the most for it, because it was the most hate to love. And if you don't know, but I say it enough, it's my least favourite trope is hate to love. And I just didn't really like that one as much because it's not my favourite trope. It was very like Romeo and Juliet insta-lovey, which is also not really my kind of thing. So, it was fine, but not my favourite. And then the third one was Below Zero, which has Hannah and Ian. And Ian's cute. They basically, one day they meet. Hannah asks to sort of shadow someone at NASA, and she meets Ian, and they go to his office, and they have this sort of very steamy makeout session, and they then end up meeting again in the future, but Hannah misunderstands, because there's always a misunderstanding trope, misunderstands something that Ian says, thinking that he, doesn't like her, and he's out to get her and stop her career, which he isn't, but that's what she assumes. And then she goes on a really dangerous NASA expedition despite his basically ruling that she can't. So it's her kind of being defiant against that, and then he ends up needing to save her. So I gave it 4 stars. I didn't enjoy it as much as Under One Roof, but I appear to have still thought it was enjoyable. Then we have The Flat Share by Beth O'Leary. And this one I gave, according to Goodreads, 3.75/4 stars. So I think realistically a 4-star. I need to stop giving 0.75 stars like it's a thing. Flatshare was really fun. It's about Tiffy and Leon, and they both need a roommate. And so they take that really literally, and rather than just sharing a flat with separate rooms, they actually share a bed, and Tiffy occupies it at night while Leon's on night shifts, and then they swap, and he lives there during the day. And they communicate solely via post-it notes for a lot of the book, and then they end up meeting in person. It's such a cute idea. I just didn't feel completely in love with the characters. I always felt like I was sort of watching in on their lives rather than being really absorbed in them. But it was really fun, really enjoyable. I really think it's 4 stars. I need to go through and amend some of my Goodreads ratings. But yeah, it was really fun. I don't think I would necessarily choose to reread it, but very fun. The rain is getting much harder. Again, I hope it's atmospheric. So then next up, I listened to the audiobook for Agatha Raisin and the Potted Gardener. The Agatha Raisin series is a cozy mystery series about Agatha Raisin, who ends up solving the town of, I can't remember what the town is called, Carsley, basically solving their murders, you know, getting involved, even though really she should be leaving it to the professionals, but doesn't, because that's what happens in cozy mysteries. And I gave this one 3 stars, I think. Let me just turn the page in my book. Yeah, 3 stars. This one had a really graphic death, which I didn't like. But I really liked the audiobook narrator for these, but unfortunately in a future one of these, they are very much of their time. They're from around when I was born, 1992, and they have sexist elements, they have racist elements, and this one it wasn't too obvious, but in the next one it really was, so I've DNF'd the series for now, which I'm really sad about because I don't enjoy any other audiobook listening experience as much as that one, but unfortunately these things happen. Then next up, I listened to Eragon, though as I say, I was listening to this for 185 days, so from the 15th of July, so it was a very long time. And you probably know Eragon, but Eragon is the first in 4 books in a fantasy YA series about a boy called Eragon who finds an egg in the forest, and he thinks it's gonna kind of turn his family's fortunes around, and then it hatches into a dragon, and he has to keep the dragon a secret from his family, but in doing so he actually ends up putting his uncle and cousin at risk, and a sort of very dangerous fire happens to their property, and he ends up needing to sort of go on an adventure to escape the sort of forces that live in the area, but also to discover more about why, you know, he's ended up with this dragon, Saphira, and about the dragon riders and kind of what that could mean, and, you know, whether that would have any bearing on his future. And I don't know if I ever finished the series when I first read it. I don't know if I listened to it on audio originally, but I thought it was a good option for audio. It's a really good audiobook narrator. It's very long. It took a long time to get through, but it's like a 24-hour audiobook. And during Eragon is when I discovered I could listen to audiobooks faster than 1x speed. So that was useful to make it a bit shorter. But I think it, you know, it was Christopher Paolini wrote it when he was like 15. So there has to be some sort of kudos there. But it just felt a bit, there was a lot of action scenes and not a lot of character development, and it was like when you'd get through an action scene there was then another one and another one and another one, and it just was too much in the end. So I gave it 3.5 stars. I've only written 3 in Goodreads on my journal, sorry, but I've put 3.5 on Goodreads, but it maybe is a 3. I feel very harsh in saying that, but it, you know, it's an enjoyable story, but I don't feel like if I want to carry on, and that's really sad when I was really keen to read it. Next up, we have Mr. Perfect on Paper by Jean Meltzer. I picked this book up in Barnes & Noble when I was in Florida because it just looked really fun from the blurb, and when I looked it up on Amazon, it was much cheaper for me to buy it over there. I am, however, very sad because I will be unhauling it because it was a 3-star read for me. So we have Dara, who runs a Jewish dating app, and she's really super successful but unsuccessful in love, and her grandma really wants her to settle down, so they go on this Good Morning News show to promote the dating app, and her grandma brings this list that Dara wrote to her sister about her ideal man who has to be Jewish, and Chris, the presenter of the Good Morning show, is desperate to save his show. Dara's segment goes down really well, and so they decide to make it a regular thing that they're going to find Dara's perfect man, and, you know, it turns out maybe that doesn't need to be her sort of perfect Jewish husband. And the premise of it is so interesting, but it's just, it wasn't quite for me. I didn't particularly like Dara. I liked Chris, In fact, I've written on Goodreads, I love Chris and Lacey, so there you go. And I liked the Jewish elements because it introduced a lot of Jewish culture without sort of explaining everything to you. So I thought that was good. But yeah, it had some explanation, and I didn't know whether sort of people who are actually of Jewish culture and faith would find it a bit annoying, but I didn't. As somebody who's not of the faith, I love learning more about other faiths and cultures and things. Dara has anxiety, and that was kind of dealt with okay-ish. But I have anxiety, and they kept saying generalized anxiety disorder in the book, like every time they referenced her anxiety, and it just felt a little bit over the top. But Chris is really good at dealing with it, which is very cute, but a lot of the criticism of the book is about the representation of anxiety in it. But for me, I think the pacing was really the issue. I didn't really believe in Chris and Dara. I think a lot of the sort of them falling for each other happens off the page, and I don't really like when that happens. But I'm reading the book to read you fall in love. I don't want it to happen without me. So yeah, unfortunately, just a 3 stars and will be an unhaul. Then I read The Bride Test, which is the second in the Kiss Quotient series by Helen Huang. And I gave the Kiss Quotient 3 stars. I much preferred The Bride Test, so really glad that I enjoyed it a bit more. The Bride Test is about Esme, who's working in Vietnam, and this random woman comes up to her one day and says, hey, do you want to move to the US and marry my son? And Esme has a young daughter and she wants a better life for her, and so she decides to do it. And Kai has autism and doesn't really want to get married. He doesn't really believe in love, but everyone is sort of keen for him to settle down. And there's so much pressure that he agrees that he will sort of date Esme for the summer to see how it gets on, and they gain feelings for each other. And I just thought it was really well written. I thought Kai's autism in the main was well written. There were some elements where I felt he sort of conveniently got over some of his traits related to his autism just because it was convenient for the story. So I had a couple of elements in that sense, but Helen Huang's been going through a diagnoses throughout writing the course of these 3 books, and it's very interesting to see how that influences the writing. So yeah, I really liked this one. I gave it 4 stars, so a step up in the series, and I read The Heart Principle later in the year, so you'll hear me talk about that in a bit. And then the final book that I read for January was The Roommate, which is the first in the Shameless series by Rosie Danan. And this one is about Clara and Josh. And Clara's been in love with this guy for, her whole life. And she follows him across the country to move in with him. And then she gets there and he's like, I'm going on tour, babe. But I've got this roommate to live with you called Josh. And Josh is a porn star, but he's on a break from his work at the moment because of some sort of clashings with producers. And Clara ends up watching some of his porn, and then he sort of shows her how she can please herself, and then that turns into them coming up with this sort of startup for helping teach women, teaching women and men and everybody sort of how to make sure women are pleasured appropriately. And it's incredibly steamy if you like that kind of thing. It was 3.5 stars. I wouldn't recommend reading it on a commute. I don't think it's appropriate for that, but it was a fun read. So yeah, so that was everything I read in January. So then we move on to February. Again, I am using my stickers from Thumbelina print. The February theme is very pink and red and romantic, and yeah, it's a really fun one. I really like how this cover page came out. And in terms of my left hand side, I would probably swap these over in my 2024 planner if I carried on. I thought I would like the February being on the thicker side of the journal, but I think it would probably actually make more sense on the other side. But anyway, so for this month I did slightly bigger book covers because I had less books to mention. So in the top left I put my book club reads. So 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo was for my work book club, and then What Alice Forgot was one of the books in a Discord book club with some of my friends, but the book club kind of hasn't progressed from there, and I didn't manage to get the book read anyway. So, and I forgot to mention Written in the Stars was for that, but for January. So I ended up reading that. I was like going into the month behind on the friend book club, so I was a little bit behind anyway. And then I included the book covers for Husband Material and Law Olympus because they were 2023 and 2023 reads, so I thought that I would mention that. I carried over Spare, the Prince Harry biography, as well as Jade Legacy, because I've been reading that. Sorry, it's just not my phone. Reading Jade Legacy for ages. And Ariadne, I still am no further with Ariadne. It's just the book I've been carrying over for a year, but I thought I would stick it in here. And then at the bottom, I included a couple of books I wanted to get to, which was Written in the Stars, which was the January Discord pick, which I did read. Front Desk by Kelly Yang, which is a middle grade, which I also read. And then Everything is Okay, which is a graphic novel by Debbie Tung, which I would really like to read, but still haven't read yet. So for my February stats, I read 9 books, so not as good as in January, but January was impressive mostly because of the novellas. And back in August last year, I read 8 books, and that was the most amount of books I'd ever read. So I really should be impressed that I was sort of consistently hitting really high book numbers for me at the beginning of the year. And I read 3,014 pages, so less than in January, but again, not a surprise, there's 2 less books in there. In terms of my stats, so I read 7 physical books, 1 mixed media, which was 7 Husbands, and 1 audio, so pretty normal for me. Then and with these, I only mark books I've finished. So if I carry a book over, the stats for that book will fall in the following month. So I actually listened to, say, a lot of like European Travels of the Monstrous Gentlewoman or something like that, which I've been listening to over multiple months. I will only count all of the pages for that book in the month I finish the book. So my stats are always a little bit warped because of that. I don't calculate if I've read 120 pages of Jade Legacy, I don't add it in anywhere. The full 800 pages will just get put into the month I finish it. So it's always a little bit warped, just to let you know. In terms of series versus standalone, I read 6 series and 3 standalone. So a little bit better for team standalone there. For genre, I read 4 romance, 3 contemporary. There are some romances where I will mark them as contemporary if I feel they lean more that way. 1 biography, which is Prince Harry, and 1 fantasy. The days it took to read the book is interesting, mostly for Spare, which took me 38 days to read. It's a very long audiobook, but also I listen mostly in 10-minute bursts. I listen when I walk from the station to my job and then back, so it does always take me longer to read an audiobook. It took me 14 days to read Written in the Stars and 11 days to read Like a Charm. Both of them would just put me into, I think, small reading slumps while I was reading, or just I didn't want to keep picking them up necessarily. And then book length, they were all kind of similar, I would say, roughly, apart from I Think Our Son is Gay, which was a manga, which was obviously much shorter. For book format, 7 of them were novels, 1 manga and 1 non-fiction. Purchased from, I had no Amazon reads, which is kind of what I would like. I would always rather read from like Waterstones and stuff. So I had 5 from Waterstones, 2 from The Works, 1 from Audible, and 1 that I bought at Yauk last summer. I was trying to get through all of my Yauk reads to make it more okay if I bought a load of books when I went to Yauk again this year, but I don't think I'll be able to go to Yauk because it's moved to November, which does not work for me particularly. For age category, I read 5 adult, 2 YA, and 2 middle grade, so I did have some younger reads quite significantly in there this month. Star rating, I had 4 4-stars, 3 2-stars, 2 3.5 stars, and 1 4.5, so still that elusive 5-star. And then publication year, again, I kind of just include for general interest. So let me tell you about my February books. I should also say, in terms of what I'm doing for the book spreads in the journal, I'm putting in a bigger cutout sticker with sticker paper of the actual book cover. I'm just putting in the title of the book and the author and then my star rating, and then I just write a very short summary about what the book is about, more for my general interest, because if I'm planning to read 100 books I may not remember what all of them are about, and it's been useful for this video to do that. And then for the romances I put a little heart and then I put the name of the main characters, because I've realised when I've filmed wrap-ups before I very easily forget the names of romance characters, so it's useful for me to include that. So first up in 2023, I read Front Desk by Kelly Yang. This is a middle grade about Mia, who moves to the US, and her family are trying to create a better life for them and for Mia. They end up buying a motel from a really sleazy guy, and it's very run down. It's very difficult to run. Her parents are then challenged by the landlord to make a lot of extra money, which is really difficult for them to do. And Mia helps out a lot with the running of the motel. They have a lot of, characters and run-ins with horrible people and lovely people. They look after immigrants, their family, their friends, to try and protect them and help them have a better life in America. It's such a powerful book. It's so much for a middle grade. It's quite a challenging read at times. I really recommend it. I gave it 4 stars. I think that it's well worth a read. I think it would be a challenging read for an actual middle grader of 11 years old, which is who it's meant for, but it's well worth it in my opinion, and it's a book, you know, I probably should have read when I was in middle grade. So yeah, I would really recommend that one. Then we have Written in the Stars, which is the first book in the trilogy from Alexandria Bellfleur. And in this one, we have Elle and Darcy. They are set up on a date by Darcy's brother Brendan, and it really doesn't go well. They just clash instantly. But Darcy wants to get Brendan off her back, and so she says the date went really well, and she convinces Elle to fake date her to keep Brendan kind of off her back. And then Elle also could do with having someone to fake date because of her family. So there's mutual benefit there, and, you know, in typical fake dating fashion, it progresses from there. I really wanted to like this one more than I did. I couldn't really get on board totally with Darcy and Elle. I gave it 3 stars. I just always felt like if I feel I'm on the outside of a relationship, I don't feel very invested. So, and I think it was just difficult to believe Darcy and Elle were well matched. I have since read Hang the Moon, which is the second one, so we'll talk about that in quarter 3. But you get a lot more about Darcy and Elle in that one, and it was much easier to be on board with Darcy in that one than it was in Written in the Stars, in my opinion. So I'm gutted because I love the cover and I really wanted to love it, and I'd been wanting to read it for ages. Then next up, I read The Dating Plan by Sarah Desai. Apologies for not knowing how to pronounce that. I picked this one up on a whim. I finished Written in the Stars while I was in a hotel and didn't have a book to read for the train home. So I just picked up a book I thought the cover was cute, and the cover is cute. This is actually the second in a series. I don't feel a need to go back and read the first one. So Daisy, she loves Marvel. She's super geeky, and she works for a company that's doing like the marketing and website and stuff for sort of female sanitary products. And they're at a conference, and she runs into her ex, and her aunt's there and trying to set her up with a random guy. And then she at the same time runs into Liam, who is her best friend from 10 years ago, but they haven't spoken in all that time. He left completely on a whim without saying what happened, and she's super mad at him, but he kind of pretends to be her boyfriend to get her out of having to deal with, you know, the ex-boyfriend and the auntie, and they agree to fake date. There was a lot of fake dating in February. Maybe I should rename February Fake Dating February. And they agree to fake date because it's beneficial to Daisy for the reasons I've just said, but also Liam's granddad passes away and leaves him his distillery, but only if Liam gets married within a year, or no, he has to get married by his next birthday in a couple of months' time and then stay married for the year. It's such a ridiculous clause in the will, but so Daisy agrees to marry him, not even fake date, to fake marry him for that reason. And, you know, Daisy and Liam are cute, but Liam can be really over the top in his sort of, not brutality, that's way too harsh, but he's got this kind of hot-headed Irish nature, and the way that that's represented in the book is quite sort of like, oh, he'll threaten to hit you, not Daisy, but like other men, and I just didn't really like that. He's not my sort of guy. So yeah, I only gave that one, I gave it 3.5 stars. Did I mark that as, yeah, 3.5 stars. But, you know, it was fun, and I would definitely read more by Sarah Desai. I think she's a really good writer. It just wasn't, you know, this pairing wasn't necessarily for me. Then next up, I read Well, That Was Unexpected by Jessie Q. Sutanto, which is a YA about Charlotte and George Clooney. And Charlotte's mum walks in on her. She was going to have sex with her boyfriend and then actually wasn't. She actually said to him, I think she wasn't ready. But her mum misunderstands when she walks in with Charlotte with her top off. And so she decides to send her to her home country of Indonesia for the summer to sort of spend some time with family and, you know, kind of get back to her sort of more restrained ways, I guess. And she ends up catfishing her and setting her up on a date with George Clooney, who's a sort of business royalty, I would say, in the country. But what they don't know is that they've actually been set up by their parents, so they think they're speaking to each other, but it's actually George Clooney's dad and little sister speaking to Charlotte's mum. But they agree to fake date, because fake date February. They agree to fake date because it's good for George Clooney's image and for promotion of the app that he's building. And You know, it's cute. It's cute. I can't really remember why I didn't rate it higher, so I'm just gonna open. I liked George. Yeah, okay. So I think I didn't really like Charlotte. I found her kind of unlikable. She's dealing with a lot of, you know, typical teenage struggles, and I think that's probably more interesting if you're of that age rather than my age. I also think it's one of those YAs where, like, do YAs now know who George Clooney is, or would they even understand some of these references? It's always a bit kind of odd in that way with adult writers. Then I listened to Spare, Prince Harry's audiobook. It's very long, and the middle section of the army is particularly long, but the first part about him losing Diana and how he was suffering from PTSD and believed she was still alive, and all the stuff with Meghan and the racism that they dealt with, is genuinely incredibly raw and interesting. I think Harry does a really good job with the audiobook, and you know, I'm not a royalist, but I'm definitely not anti-royal, and I'm very, I would say, generally quite pro Harry and Meghan, because I cannot stand the racism associated with Meghan. And so, you know, I think it's worth a listen, and I think some people are very harsh on it, some people love it, and I'm 3 stars down the middle, but it was really worth a listen in my opinion. And then lastly, no, not lastly, then I read Set on You by Amy Lee, which is the first in the Influencer series, and I liked this way more than I thought I would. Crystal's a curvy fitness influencer. She's at the gym one day and Scott the firefighter steals her squat rack, and she's super mad at him, but they end up making out in the changing rooms, and she's avoiding him, but then she goes to her grandma's sort of like engagement dinner to her new partner, and it turns out to be Scott's granddad, so they're going to keep running into each other, and it's about them keeping running into each other. And Scott is adorable, he's so likable, he's so lovely. The downside for me with this book was that it was surprisingly a lot about being a curvy influencer, and I, as somebody curvy, actually I like to read about curvy characters very much in books, but I don't like it when their whole identity is about being curvy, and particularly when that identity is about them being fat shamed online, and this was what that was, and I didn't recognize it was going to be that, so that's why I didn't rate it higher. But ultimately, like, I did enjoy it. Amy Lee's an excellent writer, it was a fun story, and I really liked the two of them. There was a bit of falling in love off the page, which I would have liked on the page, but in the main it was a good time. Then I read I Think Our Son Is Gay, Volume 1. This is a manga by Akura, and I loved this. I gave it 4.75 stars. I really need to stop rating things 0.75. But it's basically about a mum who is pretty much raising her kids alone because the dad lives abroad. And she recognises one day that she thinks her son is gay, but she doesn't sort of know. And I think this is the only criticism I would have, is that I think that is related to sort of cultural elements that aren't addressed. So you sort of just have to go in knowing that it's probably cultural reasons that stops her from addressing it, because she's so pro supporting her son. She's clearly such a good mum, but she doesn't ever talk to him about it, and you think it would be so much easier if you did talk to him about it. But he's, you know, a teenage boy, and he's really feels nervous about it, and he makes jokes about liking women, and you know, it was just good. If you like Heartstopper, I think you would enjoy this. I think it's very similar. It's very cozy. It's a really easy read. The art is beautiful. And Yuri, the little brother, my 0.75 is for him. He's just adorable. He's so sarcastic and funny. I just love him. So I've started the second one. Really enjoying the series. Then next up, I read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This was our work book club read for February, and I'm so glad it was. This is what made me join the book club, because I was like, well, I own this book, so I'll read it. And I really liked it. If you probably know what this is about, because it's one of the most, like, rated books on Goodreads. So if you like books, you've probably heard of it. But if not, it's about Monique, who is a journalist, and she gets contacted by Evelyn Hugo's people, and Evelyn Hugo is a Hollywood star, but very much in the later years of her life. And they contact Monique, pretending they want Monique to write an article for the magazine that she works for, but actually Evelyn wants her to write her biography. And so the actual book reads mostly like a biography. It's very interesting. And the audiobook's really good. I would really recommend the audio. It was very good, enjoyable. I read it both physical and audio, but the audio was really good. And you kind of realise over the course of the story that Monique and Evelyn are connected in ways that you're not necessarily expecting. It definitely wasn't the way I was expecting. So yeah, it was really good. I really enjoyed that one. Gave it 4 stars if I didn't say. And then last up, I read Like a Charm by Elle McNichol. This is a middle grade about Ramya, who has always felt really different and alone and carries a lot of weight about that. She has dyspraxia and she feels that nobody really understands her dyspraxia. And her and her parents are sort of apart from her family, and she ends up moving to be closer to them but still doesn't really have masses to do with them until her granddad dies, and she goes to his funeral and meets a stranger there who helps her discover that actually there's a lot more to her than she recognises, and a lot more to Edinburgh, and a lot for her to discover about her family as well. It's a really lovely fantasy. It's very interesting. I didn't realise it wasn't a standalone. There is a second book which I do own, but it was very interesting. It took me a little while to get through, but it was really enjoyable, and I'm really interested to see where the story goes from here. The rain is really picking up, so I apologise, but we're in the final quarter now. So this is March, again using these stickers from Thumbelina Print for the cover and taking inspiration from her Etsy listing. And then on the left hand side, I've put in the prompt from Instagram for the Buzzards Beat Cabin for the final book support group by Steph Loves. It was a month-long readathon in March. March is a difficult month for me because it's my busiest month of the year. So unfortunately I didn't complete all the prompts, but I did complete all but one. So I had to read a final book, for which I read The Heart Principle, use a letter generator, and I got the letter A, so Astrid Parker Doesn't Fail by Ashley Herring Blake works pretty well for that. For paperback, I did X's and O's by Amy Lee. For Beautiful and Alluring, I did Laura Olympus Volume 2. And then the one I didn't get to, because the other one was arts and crafts, so you just did like an activity. So for me, planning is my arts and craft. And then I didn't do typography cover, unfortunately. Did anything else I read in the month have a typography cover? No, not really. That's fine. So yeah, unfortunately I didn't meet that prompt because I read 120 pages of Jade Legacy and read none of Blood and Honey because, as I say, busy month, couldn't really handle a big book, but it's fine. So in terms of my stats for March, so I read 7 books. I did read 2 of them really close to the end of the month. Astrid Parker I read on the 30th, I think, into the 31st maybe, and then I read Laura Olympus on the 31st. It was really difficult to fit in reading this month. As I say, I was away a lot for work, and I would love to say that when I'm staying in hotels, I read more, but I don't. And so I only read 2,446 pages, which was disappointing, but you know, we'll pick it back up for April. So for reading method, I read 6 physical, 1 audio, again, pretty standard. I read 6 series and 1 standalone, so very team series for this month. For genre, I read 5 romance, 1 mystery and 1 contemporary. The contemporary could also be classed as a romance, but I didn't feel it really was a romance. We'll talk about it. For the days it took to read the book, the longest one was Astrid Parker Doesn't Fail at 14. The audiobook I listened to took 13, but again, that's normal. I did struggle with Astrid Parker. That's pretty normal with Ashley Herring Blake books for me, unfortunately. And then book length, by far the shortest was the audiobook I listened to, Agatha Raisin and the Walkers of Denbley, which was a very short audiobook and was probably not really worthy of my Audible credit. For the book format, I read 6 novels and 1 graphic novel. I purchased 3 of them from Waterstones, 2 from the Works, 1 from Amazon and 1 from Audible, 6 adult books and 1 YA books. For my star rating, we finally hit the elusive 5-star. I had 1 5-star, 1 4.5, 1 4, 3 3s, and then I had 1 2-star. So real 2 ends of the spectrum in March. And then publication year, again, you can just look at it for general interest, but 1995 was Agatha Raisin and the Walkers of Denbley. So let's talk about my March reading wrap up. So this video was on this channel, on my planning channel, so you may have already watched it, but in case you haven't, in case you're new, these reading journals do attract new people to watch these videos. So I'll run through the wrap up for you. So the first book I read was Husband Material by Alexis Hall. This is the sequel to Boyfriend Material, which was one of my favourite books of 2022. It's about Luke and Oliver. Luke is going through a really difficult time in his life. He's got some complicated issues with his dad and he's really acting out. There's a lot of negative public press about him, and he works for a charity and loads of the donors don't want to donate anymore because of his public image. So his best friend recommends that he fake date someone with kind of good community standing to up his public persona, and he ends up dating Oliver, who is a barrister. So they fake date. Again, love a fake dating trope me. And Oliver has stuff to gain from dating Luke as well, in terms of getting his parents off his back, which is pretty standard in fake dating romances, as I speak to you about them en masse. And I loved Boyfriend Material so much. It was so witty, so funny, such a good representation of mental health challenges for both Luke and Oliver. Husband Material is set 2 years in the future, where everyone around Luke is getting married, and the book is split up into sort of chapters of different weddings, and he decides to kind of propose to Oliver on a whim, basically, and it doesn't go how you think it's going to go, and it's probably it's a very realistic follow on, I think, from the first book, but I just didn't really want that. I didn't want a difficult romance. I loved the first book, because even though Luke and Oliver are so different, I really believe they were meant to be together, and like, me and my fiance are quite different, and that works. Like, he's an Oliver, I'm a Luke, and I just felt like I just didn't want to read the follow-on of their story. Like, I wanted to just believe that they have a happily ever after that has no challenges. And whilst I know that's not real life, I didn't necessarily want to read it in their story. And yeah, so I just didn't really like the way that the plot went out. It was still witty. It was really nice to be back with the characters, particularly with Luke's friends. There's a scene where they go to a wedding with someone that Luke works with, and that is really funny. These are some of the only books that really make me laugh out loud. But unfortunately, it just didn't do it for me. So I only gave it 3 stars, which, given the other one was like one of my favourite books of 2022, was just really sad. And there are going to be more in the series, and I don't know whether I want to carry on and read them. Like, currently this book is sat on my unhaul pile. Whether I'll do that or not, I don't know, but we'll see. The second book I read is X's and O's by Amy Lee. So this has Tara and Trevor, and it's the follow-on from Set on You. Tara is Crystal's sister, and she is a book influencer, so fun, because, or I guess I'm one of those. And she has a really, really messy breakup with her ex, and so she decides that, she loves her reading. She wants to have her chance at her second chance romance trope. And so she revisits all of her exes to see whether any of them should have been the one. And she does this with the help of Trevor, Scott's best friend. And Trevor's also a firefighter. And it was a lovely story. Like, Trevor is so cute, and his feelings for Tara are adorable. So that I really liked about the story. I rated it 4 stars, same as the first one. I'd expected to like it more, and I liked it. I feel much the same, but again, I liked Set on You more than I thought I would. Sorry for the cut at that point of the video. My camera died after the 5 hours of filming I'd done by then. But yeah, so I expected to like this one more than the other one, but I liked it the same, which is still great. A 4-star read. We love that. And I think the reason that I didn't like it more was just because I wasn't 100% sure I believed Tara and Trevor would necessarily get together in real life. Then the next book I read was The Heart Principle by Helen Huang. This is the 3rd one in the Kiss Quotient series, and there was the elusive 5-star. It was great. I know this book is not for everybody, and this is the book that is technically a romance, but I class it as a contemporary because it's really not like the other two. It's a really harrowing story about mental health challenges, about getting through health challenges for yourself and for parents. It's about getting an autism diagnosis. It's about feeling the lowest of the low. Please read the trigger warnings if you're going to read it. It is such a difficult read, but well worth it, in my opinion. I really enjoy books with good mental health rep, and I just really enjoyed it. It's about Kwan, who's the cousin of Kai. I think is he Kai's brother and Michael's cousin? I can't quite remember. I think he's Kai's brother and Michael's cousin. And then Anna, who is a sort of violinist who's really struggles with kind of the fame that she's attracted. So she's having a sort of mental breakdown about that. And then her boyfriend decides he wants to date other people. She ends up going on a one-night stand to try and get back at him. And that ends up being with Kwan. And it's very much not a one-night stand. Super good book. Really recommend. Then I read A Cuban Girl's Guide to Tea and Tomorrow by Laura Taylor Namey. This is a YA about Leela, who has a mental breakdown following her abuela passing away, her best friend having a big fallout with her, and then her boyfriend breaking up with her. She gets sent to England to live with her cousin for the summer by her mum to try and sort of, get over some stuff that she's dealing with. And she meets a guy while she's over there. And it's about her recognizing that maybe because she's very, very in love with Miami, her home, and it's about her recognizing that maybe home is not about where you are, but is about the people that you're with. So very interesting story. I found the writing very challenging. The writing style was weird. It felt like words were missing, and every time I put it down and picked it up again, it took me a while to get back into the story. So unfortunately, I only rated that one 3 stars. Next up, I read Astrid Parker Doesn't Fail by Ashley Herring Blake, which is the sequel to Delilah Green Doesn't Care. Astrid is Delilah's stepsister, and she gets coffee spilt on her by this random girl in the street. She shouts at her, and then that person ends up being the client that she's doing a renovation for. So it's an enemies to lovers, not my favourite trope, and there's something about Ashley Herring Blake's writing which just doesn't quite work for me. So I was really gutted not to enjoy this more, because I want to enjoy them and I want to read the third one, because Iris makes planners. It so sounds like my kind of thing, but we'll see. I'm sure I will read it, even though unfortunately they're not ready for me. I listened to Agatha Raisin and the Walkers of Denbley by MC Beaton. I did DNF this series at this point related to the racism issues, so I only gave it 2 stars because I love the audiobook narrator but didn't love the story. And then I read Laura Olympus Volume 2, which I really loved. It was 400 pages of mutual pining, and I just absolutely adored it. So I'm so excited, and I really can't wait to read the third one. So we have come to the final parts of what I'm doing in this journal. So for every month this year, I will be donating to a different charity, and I'm donating based on each of the 100 pages that I read. So my charity for January, I picked The Samaritans and donated £32. For February, I picked Breast Cancer Now and donated £30. And then for March, I picked Tiny Lives. This was specific to my fiance's sister, who this is a charity that she wanted people to donate to for her birthday. And it would have been like £24, but I rounded it up to 30 or to 50, possibly. I can't remember what I donated, but I donated more because it was for her birthday. But that is it. I'm just doing the flip through of all the spreads now. I really hope that you enjoyed seeing me set this up. It was a lot, as I said, to do all 3 quarters in one go, but it was fun, and I will hopefully be switching these to monthly videos so that you can see a little bit more in real time what I'm doing with my reading. But let me know what you think about it in the description. What was the best book you read in quarter 1? I would love to know. Convince me to add it to my TBR, because I'm very, very easily swayed. And I would love to hear what you've enjoyed reading. And yeah, if you did like this video, if there's sort of recommendations for what you think about it going forward, I would love to hear from you. But otherwise, that is it for today's video. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, I would really appreciate a like, and if you haven't already, I would love it if you would subscribe to my channel. In the description, you will find links to my Goodreads, so you can find out in real time with my reviews what I think of my books. You can also find my Instagram, which I share between book and planning content, so that you can find out a little bit more about my other hobbies and what I get up to and all that kind of stuff. And there will be links in the description to everything featured in this video. But otherwise, I'll see you in my next one. Bye!